It's episode 3, Game of Inches, Mayflower Sports. I'm Andrew. He is Jake. Big week ahead for us on the podcast. We got our first interview coming up. Jimmy Murphy, Boston Bruins reporter. What's up, Jake?
Good to be back, man. Episode 3. NFL divisional playoffs are going crazy. James Harden. There's so many things we're going to get into on the show. I'm excited. What was your biggest thing this weekend? There was a lot going on. NHL was back. A lot going on.
Obviously, we got the NFL divisions going on, man, but I love the NHL. I love the new format. I was fired up. I felt like it was Christmas last week, Wednesday, watching the games and just getting ready for it, preparing for it. Obviously, with my sports betting work, that was kind of fun. So it's really weird. We're going to get into it, the NHL and our first impressions on that, man. But I thought it was super weird seeing teams play each other back to back. That was kind of my biggest thing that stuck out to me over the past week, was just watching the same teams, the NHL, play each other back to back times. I thought that was kind of weird. And we're going to get into it with the NFL. But Bills Mafia, what a weird game that was. Low scoring game. Crazy stuff. Excited to get into it. And the first thing we will touch on, though, Jake, is the James Harden first game impressions. First thoughts. My first thoughts were, how does this guy lose 40 pounds in a span of a road trip? I mean, the pictures that we've seen were hilarious of just him in a warm-up uniform for the Rockets, and now he's warming up for the Nets, and this guy looks like he lost 30 pounds, and he's in good shape again. Drops a triple-double in his first game. Him and KD combined for, 72 points, something crazy. What were your thoughts on his debut, man?
Yeah, man, it was absolutely insane to see what they were able to do together. I think I saw it was scoring and assists combined, they contributed to 105 points or something, and they scored 120 or something in the game, or 122. So that's absolutely insane. But James Harden looked good, man. It's exactly what you thought it was going to be when Kyrie's not there. James Harden's going to have the ball in his hands, very ball dominant, be aggressive, get to the hole, kick the ball out. And we all know who KD is. KD doesn't need the ball to be successful. KD can spot up from anywhere and just pull, and it goes in all night long. And then once he starts hitting that jumper, man, he just starts attacking the rim, and it's game over. But honestly, without Kyrie, I think they're going to be a lot better than with Kyrie. I think Kyrie actually might add a distraction to the locker room. How do you feel? I know we both had our opinions on Kyrie, and we both think he's a kind of out there, but in terms of basketball, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny seeing Stephen A. Smith say there's a chance that something could happen with his contract with Kyrie if he decides to keep his leave of absence from that kind of stuff. So we'll keep up to date on the podcast with how the whole Kyrie situation's going. But I don't know, you know me, Jake, and me and you have played street ball together. We've played outdoor hoops, we played indoor hoops. I'm a big fundamental guy. I'm obviously not the most athletic guy in the world, so I try and use my basketball sense and all that kind of stuff. And this is the exact opposite of that. The Brooklyn Nets are going to be the absolute ISO team of the league. It's just several guys that can handle the ball, that can score for themselves, that can create for themselves, and everybody else get the fuck out of the way. I mean, that's literally what I see it's going to be for this Brooklyn Nets team. It's just scoring capability. And we talked about our first impressions of that trade on episode 2 of Game of Inches, and we talked about how it could benefit every single team. But with this, it's going to be just these guys are going to have to do it. I think it was 74 points is what it was for the combined amount of points for Harden and KD. And so I guess I'll ask this to you, Jay, because I don't really know the answer to this, and I can't really say yet. But with the lack of depth now and losing that, I mean, is this something that we're going to have to expect to be a norm? Obviously not the triple-double, but is it even that special? Because this is what we got to expect from these guys almost.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, they traded away a lot of. We saw in the game, Nikola Vucevic went to work in the paint, almost had a triple. Well, he didn't almost have a triple double. He had 5 assists, but still had an absolutely dominant game. My big thing for Brooklyn is going to be who's going to be that third scorer come playoff time. Who's going to be obviously Kyrie's probably going to come back, so he would theoretically be the third option, and that changes the whole dynamic. But if he doesn't come back, who's going to be that third guy when KD or Harden are having an off night? And right now, it's kind of hard to pick somebody like Joe Harris, I guess. He's really just a 3-and-D type of guy. I really don't know how it's going to go, to be honest. Like, what do you think?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens on those off nights for those guys and how the team performs if Harden's not, dropping 20 plus points and stuff like that. So it's to be determined, but I think it's just exactly what the media needed to just, drool all over the fact that everything we've heard from Harden over the past couple of weeks, and all of a sudden the guy drops the triple double in the first game. Can we even say we're surprised? I mean, it's just such a story. Just picture perfect thing for him. There's jokes about strip clubs. There's jokes about everything in Houston. He's saying that the team doesn't have the build to be successful, and then he goes to the Nets, does that, looks like he's in great shape. Then he says to the media, like, I didn't mean any offense towards Houston, but we all know he's definitely glad to be out of there, and it's going to be interesting seeing what that big three looks like. Before we get to the NHL recap, I wanted to mention a guy we didn't really plan on talking to, but how about my dude LaMelo Ball, Jake? How about my God leading in every statistic for rookies? Points, rebounds, assists, steals. He's doing it all. People said that the NBL and him playing in Australia wouldn't, match up and be the exact same as the NBA. That's proven to be different. This guy was playing against grown men. He's looking good, man.
Yeah, honestly, LaMelo is honestly everything I think I thought he would be. He can do it all. He's so tall. He's so long. He can shoot the ball. He's not an extremely efficient shooter yet, but he can definitely shoot the three. He has that little like in between game, that little like hezzy floater that he loves to use. Like, he's a good player. And the thing is he went to a situation where the backcourt was kind of crowded, but already he looks like he's pretty much better than a lot of like he looks like he's probably a better player. He's going to be a better player than Rozier. Like, he's going to probably be an all-star, I'd say, in the next 2 years. Like, he has everything, and he looks like he probably should have been the first pick. I know people had doubts, like you said, about playing overseas and like he didn't play against the top competition, but like when you see talent and it's like in front of you, it doesn't matter where it's playing. Like, it's going to be special, and that's LaMelo. LaMelo's going to be special. And for me, like, I don't know, like, I'll get your thoughts on it. Like, do you think that like Charlotte could like end up pushing for one of those like play-in games? Like, I'm not really sure if I'm willing to say that yet, but they do have a lot of talent.
I think their schedule has been a little bit light. We'll see how it goes. I think their schedule has been a little light. They've started off the season pretty strong, but with a lot of people saying the preseason wasn't the same as most other preseasons, it'll be interesting to see when other teams start to get their groove. Like the Raptors, like the only victories they have in the season are against the Hornets, and I think that says something about when other teams start getting it going more. I think it'll make things worse for them because the Raptors aren't playing good basketball right now. Also, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it was pretty cool watching Lonzo and LaMelo play each other too. LaMelo hit that step back three on his older brother Lonzo. That was kind of cool to see. The Pelicans, take on the Hornets. That was awesome. All right, Jake, we're going to get into the NHL. First impressions. I mentioned off the top how fired up I was. I got a lot to say about it, so I'll throw it to you first, and I'll kind of close things out with it.
Yeah, honestly, what a start to the NHL week, man. The Canadian division is by far the best division. Like, that's going to be amazing to see the back-to-backs go. In terms of like the games, it's been kind of weird that like leads really haven't been safe, or if one team is winning, like they're winning definitively. Like, it's been kind of like I haven't really been able to gauge the Canadian division. I know we gave out our like preseason predictions on who we thought we're gonna win the divisions and make the playoffs, but now like I'm in a loop. Like, Vancouver looks really good, Calgary looks really good. Like, I honestly don't know like what to think about the Canadian division. Like, what were your thoughts?
Canadian division alone, the exact same thoughts as you is that, first of all, the Ottawa Senators beat the Maple Leafs in their first game of their back-to-back set. That was awesome to see. As a Habs fan, I hate the Leafs. So that was kind of cool to see. But in all seriousness, not just even to be a hater on the Leafs, it just goes to show that with scheduling spots or with anything, any team's going to be able to beat any team. Opening thought, as far as that Montreal versus Toronto opening Wednesday night, that just sucked to see them losing overtime. The puck hits a referee to close things out. Quick turnover, the Leafs score on that. 5-on-3. As a Habs fan, I can make a bunch of excuses, but they're looking pretty good. I like their team. I like their build. Obviously, Price is playing like the regular Price. They smacked around the Edmonton Oilers, which was great to see in their first game of their road trip. So that was awesome. But first impressions on the new season and the new format for me, man, was like, it's like you don't really know what to expect from one game to the next. Like the Islanders, I liked the Islanders to beat the Rangers in that first 2-game set, and they got it done. And then the Rangers slapped them around in their second game. Like it's just same thing with the Sharks. You look at the Sharks and the Coyotes, they played each other. The Sharks got it done in game 1, and then Coyotes easily get it done in game 2. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, in what we see from one game to the next during these back-to-backs. And it still is weird to get used to, man. Like, I'm checking the Score app. I'm checking ESPN to see, like, which games are on tomorrow, which games are on the next day. And it's like, oh, shit, it's like it's the same games I already watched tonight and, like, that kind of stuff. But it's cool. I think it, like, makes for a lot more underdogs.
Yeah, honestly, I really enjoy the back-to-backs. Like, some people might not necessarily like it, but I like the sway, like the swing in the games. Like Colorado, for example, like, you know, we got spanked in the first game, and then second game we come out and we win 8-0. Like, it's cool to see like how those teams make those adjustments from game to game, right? Normally we wouldn't see that all the time because we wouldn't see getting to play every team on a back-to-back, which pretty much is going to happen not every game, but for most of the games you're going to get back-to-backs. And in terms of like for me, I'm a hockey fan. I love the hockey, but for me, it's going to be hard to, like you said, like know, like each time, like I might have to see like a 3-game set, like baseball. I find sometimes in baseball, like if I know you're playing each other 3 times, like I might only tune in to see that like 1 or 2, like really good pitching matchup. And like, I don't know about for you, like you're obviously a huge hockey fan, just like me, but do you feel like there might like be a loss of interest when you start to like get into like the 3rd and 4th cycle of like playing these same teams?
I think like you look at the Carolina Hurricanes, like they open it up against the Detroit Red Wings, and like for that series, I mean, who's watching those guys anyway? But if you are watching them and it is a blowout in game 1, you're not going to want to watch game 2. But to use your team for example, because I kind of forgot it to mention that, so I'm happy you did. Obviously, that was kind of cool to see because the Blues dominated in game 1, and then the Colorado Avalanche dominated even more in game 2. So it keeps you on your edges. And the difference is, I think, from baseball to hockey, seeing it is that like with baseball, you've got, you know, the Yankees playing the Orioles in a 3-game set. You pretty much know the result, you know, like I think it's great for the league seeing how the Sens beat the Leafs in game 1 of that set. It makes it known for the rest of the season that, hey, like this is something you can expect. This is something you can get used to seeing, that it's not going to be just the heavy favorites to win. And so I guess that's what my answer would be to you, is that it has to be, you know, a lot more underdogs. It has to be some differences from happening from each game, whether it's a low scoring game or a high scoring game or one thing to the next. But, you know, if we're seeing, you know, one team playing, like, for example, when the Kings play the Golden Knights, the Kings could be scrappy, but it could easily also be an easy 3-game sweep if they're playing 3 games in 4 nights. And, you know, if I'm a Kings fan, I want to be a diehard fan as much as I want to be, but do you really desperately want to watch a 3rd beatdown of your team? I don't think I want to watch that.
No, I think I agree with you, man. It's going to be interesting, though, because like the Canadian division, I know we're going to keep talking about this and it's going to be a hot topic all year. I feel like the rivalries are already there. So it's going to be a little bit different. Like you said, Ottawa and Toronto, right? Like that's already a rivalry, right? So you know those games are always going to be tough and you're going to want to play hard. Like they're from the same province. Like I get that. I mean more so like when we get down, like you said, like when we see LA play Vegas for like the 5th time this year, and Vegas is just slapped them every game.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to want to watch that anymore? That's where, and I know like the East Division is pretty competitive too, and I know there's going to be some games. It's my thing is I want to see how it unfolds with like when we get like later into the season and we start to see these same matchups over and over again.
Yeah, like the Blackhawks opening up against the Lightning. The Lightning make like, well, no pun intended, but light work against them in back-to-back games. It was no problem. So that's kind of interesting. And when you look at it too, it's going to be interesting to see how teams get up for certain games a lot more. Like in that second game they played against the Blackhawks, you could tell they kind of were. It's only their second game of the season, man, and they were like trying less. It seemed like they were like expecting to win, you know. And it's just it was so weird to see. You know, from a betting perspective, I needed the Lightning to win by 2 in the second game, and I know somebody else I work with also needed that, and he's texting me just like worried about the pick. it was like they were up by one. I think it was like 3-2 or something like that with a few minutes, like 5 minutes to go in the game. And I was like, dude, you're going to cover your like puck line. It's just like the Lightning just don't really give a shit enough to be trying throughout the full game. Like,
Yeah.
and they end up winning like 5-2 anyway or something like that. So it's interesting. And before we move on, though, I do want to say that my first impression, too, of the league was because of no preseason, there was some sloppy hockey, man. Like, there was some turnovers. Like, anyone that knows me knows I'm the biggest bender out there on the ice. But I saw some guys that could barely skate. They were gliding around out there, and quite a few overtimes as well early on.
Yeah, we saw 2 in the Boston, New Jersey series to kick that off. So that was pretty cool to see, and especially in that game. Like, those were low scoring, like tough games. Like, those were real like trench games where like those games were won and lost on like puck battles and stuff like that. And you know, for me, the fatigue, like, you're a big like depth guy, and like we go back to like that's going to be the big factor I think for this year moving forward is just like what team is going to have the most depth and how are they going to perform on the back-to-backs like we've been harping on. It's for me, I don't really have a gauge on the NHL season yet just because it's so new and I'm still trying to get to like terms with like all the movement that happened this off season, all the COVID protocols, like the Dallas games getting postponed. Like, how is that going to affect them later in the season? Like, all of these, like, there's so much going on. It's so hard just to get a grasp of everything that's going on in the NHL right now.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about it each and every episode on the Game of Inches podcast. When we come back, we're touching on NFL divisional games. Of course, my Packers moving on, the Bills moving on. We will continue to talk about these games. We got one game going on as we record this podcast right back here on the Game of Inches podcast. The Full Circle Realty team specializes in commercial, residential, and property management by taking a distinctive entrepreneurial approach to help clients and customers find their next investment. If you're looking to buy or sell real estate in 2021, contact the team today at info@circlerealty.ca to learn more. Back here on the Game of Inches podcast, episode 3. He's Jake. I am Andrew. Time for the NFL divisional recap. Packers moving on, baby. 32-18. Nothing to really be too proud of because of the injury to Goff, because of the whole situation with the Rams. But I'm still excited. We got some haters talking about our easy path and everything like that. But you earned that path. So I'm not even going to say anything about that. You earned that path by playing so well during the regular season. How about my guy, Aaron Rodgers, running it in for a touchdown, 2 passing touchdowns? It seemed to me like that Packers game was just an overall team victory. We got Tanyan playing well. We got Lazard playing well. Valdez-Scantling playing well. Devontae Adams opens things up with a TD like he does in every other single game. It just seemed to me like a very well-rounded game for the Green Bay Packers. Jones on the ground had a pretty good game as well, and the Rams just couldn't keep up. Cam Akers, we touched on him in episode 2, Jake. Cam Akers, what he'll have to bring to the table for the Rams. I thought that he did everything he really could, but the throwing game just wasn't there for the Rams, and the Packers just looked ready. I mean, you score 32 points. I knew if this Packers team got to 30 points, the Rams weren't going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, definitely, man. Goff had a pretty efficient game. We only had 10 completions. The 174 yards is a big yikes, but Cam Akers, like you said, he had 90 yards and a TD. My overall thought on the game was basically Green Bay did what they had to do to get the win. It was nothing flashy. Like, it wasn't Showtime Packers, like, running around and just dropping dots everywhere on everybody. Like, the game was pretty close, honestly, until Lazard caught that deep one to put the game to bed. But like you said, the Packers can only beat it who's in front of them. I hate that, like, weak path, blah, blah, blah. Like, you play the 16 games throughout the regular season to get to play those home field games against those quote unquote lesser teams in the playoffs, which there really isn't any. So like, it's all.
And
like
the Rams beat the Seahawks. The Rams earned their way to
Exactly.
get there too.
Exactly. Like, I hate that like talk. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is when people bring that up. But honestly, on to the next one, the big game tonight, Bucks and Saints. We'll see who gets to go up against Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau.
Definitely. I'd love to see Brady against Rodgers. We'll see what happens. That's going to be a crazy matchup. Obviously, we're recording the podcast before that. Ravens, Bills take it 17-3. I feel like, getting a folding table right now and jumping off something and landing on that table because as much as I'm a Packers fan, it seems like I've definitely morphed into a Bills guy too, just from a betting standpoint and a Josh Allen fanboy standpoint. He's just been fantastic. He's been amazing for that team. But more so than anything, I think I got to come out and say it, just make it official. I'm a Lamar Jackson hater. I am. I just am. I might as well just come out and say it. I am. You got a running back for a quarterback. I've said this for weeks. And it goes to show. I mean, when they were successful and they beat the Titans, it was due to Lamar Jackson's ground game. What does that even say about a quarterback if they have to be successful when their quarterback is running the ball? I think Josh Allen and the Bills did what they had to do, to use an expression you like to use, Jake, and 17-3, quite a bit of a boring ball game, but hey, a win's a win for the Bills, man.
Yeah, I am officially declaring I am on the Bills Mafia bandwagon just for this playoffs. Like I have to do it. I love everything about the Bills. I love Josh Allen. I love Stephon Diggs. I love just Doug Marrone. I love everything about that franchise. It's good to see them back. 25 years of no playoff, like you know what I mean? It's sad. Like they're an historic franchise. But overall thoughts on the game, man. I'm not going to say I'm a Lamar hater, but I do want to say that I was right and you were definitely right about our dissection of his game. Like even in our group chat, we had a debate about this a couple days ago. To me, Lamar is never going to reach that next level. And I know he won the MVP, but that was strictly off the team success and how he ran the football. He's never going to win anything in terms of a team success standpoint until he learns how to throw the ball from the pocket. And that might be meaning Baltimore has to go out and get an extra receiver or two because we know he loves Mark Andrews. And Hollywood Brown is basically a deep threat. He's one-dimensional. He's quick. He's shifty, but he really doesn't have that route tree that someone like Lamar Jackson is going to need to get the ball out quick. And that's the thing for me. Like the defense can be good and they can run the ball, which they didn't. They didn't run the ball well at all this Buffalo dominated at the line of scrimmage at both sides of the ball. To me, I don't know how many sacks. I think they had a sack or two. I don't think they had any sacks on Josh Allen, to be honest. But on to the next one for the Bills. You're going to be playing KC, as we just found out. No Mahomes, potentially. We don't want to say that because we obviously want to see Mahomes in there playing. We want to see the best of the best play each other. But it's going to be an interesting one. We said from the first episode that the Bills were our sleeper to knock off the Chiefs if anyone was going to be able to do it. And to throw it back to you, bro, like, do you think there's an actual shot there? Like, I know some people might think we're just making this up and there's no real shot, but I think they do.
I guess Juju was right, man. The Browns is the Browns. That's what we found out about the Browns. They didn't get it done. Obviously, Mahomes gets injured. I think easily we could see the Bills take them on. And with Mahomes being the quarterback as well, I want to right now from this point pretend at least that Mahomes is that quarterback just as an instant gut reaction. But it sucks to see a guy like that go down. But this team is so much more spread out. I heard people talking all week long about the fact that, and of course, I'm always connected with the point spreads being in the betting industry and stuff, but the Kansas City Chiefs hadn't beaten a team by double digits since they beat the Jets like several months ago. And people were worried about that. Like getting a job done by margin of victory does not matter. Like it really doesn't matter at all. Like it's just about getting the win, finding a way to win games, spreading things out throughout different receivers, getting that game going on the ground game. And I think it's a really good point that you brought up, Jake, about the Ravens, because Gus Edwards, it wasn't there for him. J.K. Dobbins, it wasn't there for him, at least as much as it should have been. And that's a difference maker. I think the Kansas City Chiefs can get it going on the ground. I still think they're a great team. However, the Bills, it might even be an anything you can do, I can do better situation, especially with a banged up Mahomes. Let's say Mahomes is out there. He is the quarterback of that team. We still know that there was an injury. We still know there was a problem. And if he's not out there, that's a whole new ball game that we will discuss leading into the next game on our next podcast. But the Bills are live, man. The Bills are live. Bills Mafia is fired up. They're launching themselves through their tables, or at least they wish they could be. It's going to be a great bowl, man.
I was going to say, just before we move on, we also have to give a shout out to the defense, man. The defense of the Buffalo Bills. I said it, and I feel bad for saying it, but it's true. They can be spotty. They can be prone to giving up points and being suspect. They had 4 sacks on Lamar before going out of the game. And then ultimately, we didn't reach on it, but the decisive play of the game was the Teron Johnson pick 6. Like, one of the worst throws I think I've seen in a long time. Like, not in terms of like a bad throw, but like he literally hutted the ball, took the 3-step drop, and the whole time was looking at Mark Andrews. Like, did not take his eyes off of him from 1 second. And all Johnson had to do was just step in front of the ball. And I forget who I heard say it on the broadcast, but anytime you see a defender catch a football moving forward in their end zone, they're probably going to score going the other way. And for me, not to keep harping on Lamar, but big improvements need to be made either to the team this offseason to be more conducive to his play style, or he's just got to improve himself as a pocket passer.
That's a good point you bring up about the defense, for this Bills team, because you did mention on the last podcast leading into the weekend that they can be spotty. They obviously perform, since we are ripping apart Lamar, a guy that has been talked about so much, but the other side of it too, Jake, to flip the script before we move on, the other side of it is they only allowed 17, right? I talk about the Packers, they scored 32 points. That's hard for any team to beat a team scoring 32, but you add in a better quarterback. People are going to hate to hear me say that, but you add in a more spread out offense, and all of a sudden you're right there in that game. I mean, 17 points for a playoff game, that can get you a win. But let's look at it here. 17 points wouldn't have beaten the Rams. 17 points would have tied what the Cleveland Browns scored, right? I mean, that's just kind of how I have to look at it. I know everything's a different game, but 17 points isn't a lot of points in comparison to how many points this Bills team scored all season long, right? That has to mean something.
Yeah, I guess Baltimore's defense was playing well, but to me, there was no turnovers. They got the punts and the 3-and-outs and all that, but that's part of football, right? The game's won and lost on the turnover battle. And Lamar also had the rushing fumble that we forgot to mention too. So there's 2 turnovers, 0. And the score difference was a 2-score game. And there it is. That was the difference. And to me, there's always going to be this discussion around Lamar. And to get off of this, I'm just more excited that the Bills are going to the conference championships. They have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And I'm just excited to be a part of Bills Mafia for the playoff run, man. It's awesome.
Well, I'll say this, and I think that everybody hopes that we see this every single league or whatever it is, whatever sport you're talking about, you want to see close games. I think we talked about that with the college football championship as well, about how we want it to be close. The semifinals, the conference finals are going to be close, and I think the Super Bowl will be very close. Looking forward to breaking that down and getting into that. Let's get into some UFC talk. We haven't talked UFC on the podcast yet, Jake. I know that you're a bigger UFC guy than me. I would say that I'm somewhat of a casual, probably past 6 to 8 months. I've definitely dived more into it, gotten to know a lot of the fighters, and it's really fun, especially because we've been having cards every Saturday. So we're going to bring in our buddy, Harrison, bring him in. But Jake, when we do bring him in, I'll get your thoughts, just overall your opinion on the card, man.
Yeah, honestly, it was a pretty awesome card. I forget how many there was, but there wasn't very many at all. There were some highlight reel knockouts, but obviously Max Holloway stole the show. This dude is a animal. Nobody can do what Max Holloway does in the octagon. Despite that he lost, the fact he lost to Volkanovski in the second fight in their rematch, a lot of people debated that, but to me, Calvin Kattar is a tough dude, and we saw that. He got battered that whole fight. That whole fight, he got battered, and I don't think he went down once. For me, Max just needs to keep doing what he's doing, and he's gonna get back to the spot that he wants to be at, which is the champion of that division, of the 145-pound division. And he could go up to 155 and fight again too. But for me, Max is the cream of the crop of 145, and he's going to get that third fight with Volkanovski after that performance, whether he has to fight somebody else and then fight Volkanovski. But there's nobody at 145 pounds that I think can beat Max Holloway at all. Like, what do you think about, like, as a casual, like, I know you might not know like the technical aspect, or you might, but like just from like what you saw, like that was a pretty flawless performance. He was showboating, he was loud, like plenty of combinations. Like what did you think?
I'll say that it means something to me to see that Joe Rogan is talking about that being like one of the best performances he's seen in a long time. Like that means something to me. A guy like Joe Rogan, who a lot of people respect in the game, a commentator obviously in the game, and just to hear that makes me rewatch the video, rewatch the highlights that I saw, and be like, all right, what about this fight specifically is making Joe so excited? And I know there's so many things you can say. I'll say this from my perspective, man. Seeing how many strikes a guy can land in such a short period of time is unbelievable. I love to say this in any sport, but it looks like that he's just having fun out there, man. Like he's doing what he loves to do. I know most fighters probably wouldn't be doing that if they. I mean, I hope you enjoy fighting if you're doing that for your career. But he genuinely is having fun out there, and that was kind of my impression. It was like these guys are doing battle. You know, I hate to be this guy, but sometimes you kind of hate to see someone just get beat down like that. I hate to be that soft guy on the pod right now, but it was just an unbelievable fight. Holloway, it was obviously his fight there. Let's bring in Harry. We'll get his thoughts overall on yesterday's card and obviously the main event. What's up, Harry?
How's it going? Yeah, well, we should just have a moment of silence for Calvin Kattar right now. I mean, God knows what he's feeling right now after that. That was one of the biggest beatdowns in history. Probably the most dominant fight I've ever watched live. The only thing I can think of that comes close is Covington when he beat the crap out of Lawler for 5 straight rounds. And Lawler just stood there and just took it for 5 rounds.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, dude. Like, when you think about Max Holloway, like, I know you really love, like, the technical aspect of the fight. So, like, something that stood out to me was, like, Calvin Kattar had that, like, highlight reel elbow knockout, that step-in elbow, right? And I think it was in the second round, he tried that on Max Holloway and missed. And it was weird because Max didn't throw an elbow up until that, and then just started unleashing these nasty elbows. Like, tell me what you thought of Max's game, like overall, and specifically like up against the fence where he was just dominating Kattar.
Oh, it was ridiculous. He was just battering him up against the fence, and Kattar was just covering up, taking everything he had. And I don't think I've ever seen Max Holloway start that fast ever. I come out looking for the finish like the moment the fight starts. You usually see him warm up for a couple rounds and get into the fight, but this time he came out quick. He was throwing everything from the start of the bell, which is really dangerous against a guy like Kattar, who's probably one of the most powerful guys in the division. And Kattar said himself he thinks he's the best boxer in the division and was calling Max the freshman all week. Not a good look.
We saw how that turned out, man. We saw how that one turned out. And me and you are both like, I wouldn't call us like, you're more of a UFC savant than I am. I would say I'm pretty hardcore, but like you really love like the whole sport, the up and coming guys and all of that. Yeah. So tell me what it was like what you feel like. I know you've been into UFC for a long time, like watching Max grow as a fighter, even though he lost like his 2 previous fights, like just as an overall fighter, this guy has come such a long way.
I mean, you can explain it with this one stat. Max Holloway is 29 years old, and he leads the UFC in significant strikes in history by over 600 strikes. And he's 29 years old, and he's still getting better. I mean, he's been fighting the UFC since he was 20. Fought Conor McGregor like 8 years ago. Went the distance with McGregor. Still the only person at 145 to ever go 3 rounds with McGregor. He's durable, he's tough, and he keeps getting better and better.
What can you say, Harry, about what you see from one fight to the next from certain guys? I mean, you mentioned how he's done, and Jake talked about how he's done over his past 2 fights. Then we see that performance last night on the return of the UFC post New Year's, post Christmas. What can you say about that? Like how a fighter develops? And also, I want to ask you this because correct me if I'm wrong, but he didn't really do much sparring before this fight. And it seems like that's coming a lot more popular for fighters these days.
Yeah, it is. He said after the fight that you only have one brain and there's no point in taking unnecessary damage, which makes a lot of sense, especially for someone that has 30-some fights in mixed martial arts. you know everything there is at that point. Sparring's not going to do anything that you haven't seen before. So it made a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, do you think that like because he wasn't sparring? I know you probably heard this on the broadcast too. I forget. I think it was Daniel Cormier that it almost looked like he was like more like free.
Yeah.
Like he was used he was so stringent and like when you're doing sparring like mechanically that like you want to get everything perfect. Where in this fight like he was throwing like spinning kicks like some of those spinning kicks to the body were like some of the nastiest kicks to the body I've ever seen, man. Like I was telling a guy at work the other day that I would so rather someone punch me in my face than ever rip me with a body shot because it just kills. It literally kills. It shuts your whole body down. Like the fact Cater just took, I forget how many body strikes he had, but he took so many. Do you think that like that's something that Max can translate again, but into against Volkanovski? I know Volkanovski's a lot better wrestler than Cater, but I feel like those body strikes and those leg kicks against Volkanovski could really slow down like his tenacious pace.
I think he could definitely use it, but I don't think he could use it in a spinning matter just because of Volkanovski's takedown threat. That would be given away around if he could get Max to the floor. So I don't think he could do the spinning attacks, but he should use the leg kicks more. And you saw him using the kind of step through kick that you see John Jones use, where he goes attacks right above the knee.
Yeah,
and it
that's
kind
a
of gets your
deadly
opponent.
kick.
When they're stepping forward and you catch it there, it can limit their mobility for the rest of the fight if you get them in the right spot. So I thought that was really interesting because he went to that a few times early in the first round, which is really interesting. And he broke the record for most body strikes in a fight, so he was landing a lot.
Didn't know that, man. That's actually pretty crazy. How many strikes was it that he had again? I think you told us in the group chat. How many total strikes?
So Max Holloway held the record for most significant strikes in a fight coming into this at 290, and he landed 445 significant strikes in this fight.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy.
So bad. Like that's so
why
bad.
Harry opened up the way he did that's why he introed himself the way he did, saying that he's doing a hell of a lot better than Calvin Kattar's probably doing right now. Because that's insane, man. Like obviously we could all have our own perspective and we all kind of know what it's like to recover. Well, we don't know what it's like to recover from that, but like Harry, from what you know, what's it like? Like what's this week like for Kattar right now? Like how long is he feeling numb for?
It's not good, especially since he has to stay in Abu Dhabi for a few more days before he can take a 24-hour flight back home. So it's not fun. He has a broken nose. His ribs are probably torn apart, I would imagine. And you saw the beatdown they took in that fourth round. In that fourth round, Holloway landed 141 significant strikes in that round alone. And he was just eating elbows. He was eating everything to the face. It got to the point where I thought the corner might have to step in and stop it. And Dana even said post-fight that he was looking at the corner like, do something.
Yeah,
so, it
was nasty. Looking forward, bro. I know this is UFC Fight Week, right? And I know you're really excited for Chiesa Magny that's coming up on Wednesday, I believe it is. Do you want to give us like your thoughts on that? Just that's a pretty interesting stylistic matchup for me, but we'll let you dive right into it and you can tell me what you think about it.
It's a really interesting matchup because Chiesa is 3-0 since moving up from lightweight to 170. And Neil Magny's kind of got that gatekeeper role type thing where if you want to be legit at 170, you have to beat a guy like Magny. But Magny doesn't like that. He's on the way up too. I mean, Magny's 16-4 in the UFC in his last 20, which is ridiculous because that's only over the past few years. This guy's so active. He's always fighting. And Chiesa likes to get his work down on the ground most of the time. He's competent on the feet, but the ground is where he gets all his finishes and where he can win the fight. But Magny is such a big guy. He's longer, bigger, stronger, and his base is so big. He'll be so tough to take down. It'll be a really interesting matchup.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you because I know Chiesa loves, like, he's one of the best dudes on the ground in the UFC, bar none. Like, easily, for me, top 2 or 3 BBJ practicers, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practicers in the UFC. For me, I really like, I know Magny's been finished a couple times and he's had some barn burners, but I really like Magny, like overall, like his fighting style. He has a good like defensive wrestling background and he's pretty lethal on the feet. And for me, I just don't know if I've seen like Chiesa's like boxing really like progress that far. Like it's gotten better, but it's not Magny level. Do you think that like Magny's level of striking being so much better than Chiesa's, but having such a good background background in wrestling, like defensive wrestling. Do you think that like he could actually get a finish maybe?
I don't really see the finish myself just because both of those guys are so durable, but Magny has an obvious advantage on the feet just because of his activity too and his kicks. Like he'll keep you at range because Magny's going to Chiesa's going to want to get in close and use his grappling. Magny's going to use those kicks all day long to keep him at range and make him pay when he comes in. And his accuracy and just his activity makes him so lethal on the feet.
Harrison Wright, joining us here on the Game of Inches podcast. We appreciate you, man. We appreciate you coming on. This guy's always talking UFC in our group chat every single Saturday night. If you're out and about, if me and Jake are out having drinks somewhere, we know who we're getting messages from with some alerts about these fights. So I always can count on Harry.
Sorry, Skinny, not to cut you off there, buddy, but just before we move on, I had one last thing I had to ask my guy. We're big bettors here, bro. What do you like for the Chiesa and the Magny fight, man? I know that's going to be a tough one to read, but there might be some money to be won on that fight. It's going to be super interesting. There's going to be some value, I think.
Yeah, the line makes a lot of sense. Right now it has Magny at -125 and Chiesa around +105, +110, which I think makes sense. But I'd probably look at a different prop. I'd probably go with Magny via decision at +175 just because of how durable both guys are. I think if Chiesa gets it to the ground, I feel like Magny's defensive enough to be able to survive, and I don't think Magny has that power right now to put down Chiesa. So I think it goes the distance, and I like Magny.
Definitely, buddy.
Jake, as long as we don't get any copyright issues here, I'll give Harry's Twitter handle a shout out here at ESPN Harry W. My guy's turned into an ESPN expert, an insider, whatever you want to call it. All right, man. We'll get you out of here. Thanks a lot, Harry.
Thanks you.
For coming on, buddy.
All right, coming up this week on the podcast, we got lots of exciting things coming up. We got one guest that we just can't wait to announce that we're going to have on, but a Boston Bruins reporter, a guy that's been covering the Bruins for a very long time, works for BostonHockeyNow.com. Jimmy Murphy, I loved it. It was a great interview, Jake. I know you had fun as well with it, man.
Yeah, Jimmy's an awesome dude. My first time meeting him, actually, I think probably my first interview. So it was really nice to get that out of the way with a guy like him. He knows a lot about hockey. Like I was like, when someone gets like a Bruins insider or Montreal insider type of tag, you would think they specifically focus on that team, but he has vast hockey knowledge and he supports Liverpool. Me and Jimmy are buddies for life.
All right, guys. Episode 3, Game of Inches in the books. Don't forget to like us on Facebook. Subscribe to us. Check us out on Twitter. Everywhere you can find us, all podcast networks. We'll see you guys next time for episode 4.